Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and today we're going to be focusing on the electrical effect that's going along the coin or logo, whichever term you want to use. Now, electricity in general, it is the same thing as lightning. However, it is in smaller quantities when you typically animate it as just electricity and not a bolt of lightning. And so the way it animates is pretty similar, but there is a difference. And the next thing that we're going to primarily focus on is the light source reflecting on the coin. Now, you need to be careful with anything that could be flashing on the screen. You don't want it to be so bright that it could influence somebody with epilepsy to have something like a seizure. And so, yeah, you need to be careful with that. So I had to get an effects node, transparency, and apply that to the coin. And surprisingly, the effect schematic was a pleasant experience throughout the time that it took to make this video. And so, yeah, I don't know what it was, really, but it was actually a nice experience. So, when I tackled the content for this video, I decided to address the light reflecting on the coin first. So, I created a Toons raster level and used a white style and decided to block it in. Now, I always started it out with the frame that had full exposure of light on it, where the full face of the coin was completely covered in light. Now, although there is an exception for the first attempt at this, every other time that the coin would rotate, every other approach at doing this, I always started at the frame that had full exposure and then eventually started working backward in time, working backward on the timeline. And I would gradually make there be less and less light on the coin. Now, I wanted the coin to have a beveled effect. However, I didn't want to use the effect schematic to create a beveled effect on the coin, because last time I applied any sort of effect on the actual logo, the coin, it would cause the program to crash every single time. And I didn't really want a repeat of that, and I still have absolutely no idea why it was crashing every single time. So, rather than having to deal with that hassle, I just decided that the best approach would just be to try to create as much of a beveled effect with what I'm drawing on the screen right now. Now, at 24 frames per second, I found that 4 frames for this, glint of light on the coin was too much. It just didn't look right. So I decided that, okay, so 2 to 3 frames is all that I need. Now, while I was working on this, there were a few thoughts that were occurring to me. Now, this is not a feature request, it's just thoughts that were occurring to me that would possibly be time savers. So if we may be allowed to dream for a second, it would be nice to have some features that are on Krita or Photoshop or Affinity Photo. Basically, what you're able to do in most of the programs that I just mentioned is you're able to do a huge time saver. You're able to control click on a layer and select everything that's on that layer. And so that would be kind of cool to see on a Toons raster level, especially, where you're able to go to, say, my coin level and control click on the level strip, on the specific level on the level strip that I want to select. And it selects all of the areas and strokes and everything, all of the strokes and fills. It selects all of that so that I could actually just deal with the actual drawing process without having to worry about staying within the lines of that face of the coin. What I wound up doing to try to save time is use the geometry tool. Specifically, I used the ellipse function of the geometry tool, then use the selection tool to select it and then transform it into the approximate size of that particular face of the coin, and then just draw out what I needed. And although this was a time saver, I still felt like, well, if I could just control click, that would be faster, I feel. And even on occasion, it might even be useful to be able to press Control Shift I in order to select the inverse of your selection. I don't know. It's just a thought, and of course, the developers don't necessarily have to put this into the program. It's just a thought. If you think it's a cool idea, awesome. That's all that this statement is. It's not a demand, it's not a request. It's just, hey, let's enter into dreamland here for a second. Now, when watching tutorials, I understand that you wind up rewinding a lot and playing and rewinding and playing and rewinding and playing, and that can be kind of tedious over time. And to be honest, sometimes it's kind of tedious for me to find the exact spot where I'm doing more than just tinkering with the effect schematic. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to show you guys a series of screen captures that I've gone ahead and photoshopped together with Affinity Photo, and I'm just going to show you the effects that I specifically used, and also I'm going to go ahead and show you guys where you can find them inside of the effects browser. So here it is, appearing on the screen any moment now. Okay, so it's on the screen right now, and as you can see at the upper portion of this screen capture, you can see how all the nodes connect and everything. To the left, we can see the green node, which represents the Toons raster level coin light inside of my particular scene. Okay, so just to the right of it, we can see the ray light effects. Okay, this creates kind of a glowing effect on the exterior of the coin, and it has rays of light that I really liked. It just seemed to fit. It took me a while to figure out how to get it to work in all of this, but there was a good payoff, and this gets applied later on in the video. So just stay tuned and you'll see me apply it. The next node, just below the coin light level, we can see the transparency node. Now, when you double click the transparency node, keep in mind that 0 transparency means that you are applying absolutely no transparency. Once you dial it up at 100% transparency, it becomes transparent, 100%. Okay, so that's how you need to think about it. It's not like Photoshop where when you dial the opacity down, at that point it becomes 100% transparent. No, this doesn't work like Photoshop. 100% means absolutely transparent. And to the right of that, we can see the glow effects. Okay, and that goes ahead and it plugs into the X sheet. Now, down below, I've shown inside of the effects browser where you can find each of these. And you can see the transparency node. It's found under layer blending and transparency there at the bottom of that list. And then you see for both the glow effect and the ray light, it's all under the light category. Alright, so back to the actual animation process itself. Right here you can actually see all the little germs of every idea that I wanted for this animation. And I'm so happy that I was actually able to get all of it. Every last bit of what I wanted in this animation wound up being in it. So I'm really happy with how things turned out. And the best way to figure out how to get the effect schematic to work for you is just to keep playing with it. And of course, you know, if you have an alternative, if you have someone with a little bit more experience, having them to turn to every once in a while for something small so that you don't irritate them also really helps. For some reason, I needed help finding the transparency node. I guess I was just looking for a node called opacity. That's just what it's always been called in every single graphics program I've ever used. I don't expect it to change its name just for my sake, but I was looking for opacity, not transparency. And the reflection in the coin, the light reflection, it looks kind of cool when it has no transparency applied to it. It looks kind of Adobe Animate, Adobe Flash-like. But when I would actually play the animation itself, although it wound up looking really cool to me, it would be really, really annoying to anybody else. So I just wanted to factor in seizures and annoyance. No one likes having something reflecting straight into their eyeball. Nobody likes that. And so it was really important that I find the transparency node. And here you kind of see me trying to figure out how to get this ray light effect to work. By the way, when you activate the ray light node and everything like that, it always shows up as yellow. Just double clicking on that node, you can actually see under color. You double click color and you can change the color. It's not really that difficult, but the settings for the ray light effect itself, I did a lot of playing around with it, with the numbers and everything, the values applied to all of them, and to be honest, even after playing with it for a good long while, I still couldn't really figure it out. So I can't really give you any pointers as to what does what with that specific node. Now, the next step was adding the electricity to the coin, and I wanted to kind of get a rough draft of the motion, and the best way that I could think of is applying just this moving block of blue color. That seemed like it made a lot of sense to me, and so I played the animation back over and over again, and I could actually see, yeah, this electricity is moving pretty quick with this blue blob. It does register to the eye, and even if it doesn't, it does get you to realize at the tail end of the animation, oh, there was electricity there. And there's just these little subtle movements going on throughout this animation that kind of, in my opinion, kind of gravitate your attention towards it. It's kind of interesting because I'm thinking in terms of graphic design over time with the implementation of motion, which I've never done before, ever. And the animation process of the electricity was really similar to the process of animating lightning, just making it semi-similar to the previous frame. You don't want it to be so dramatically different that it doesn't look like it fits, but you want it to be distinctly different because electricity is pretty chaotic. And now, when the electricity starts to die off, instead of using the selection brush to go ahead and thin it out more and more, you just use a thinner brush or apply less pressure to the stylus. And that's really it. And at the tail end of the third strike of lightning, technically it's the third, I decided that I would have like this little stream of electricity that would shoot down into the ground. But, you know, there's the second strike of lightning, which sends the electricity going up, which sends the electricity going down, which I just think looks stinking cool. But that's my biased opinion and everything like that. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. I really enjoyed doing this. Now, if I were to go ahead and animate the electricity all over again and make some different decisions, there's not really much difference that I would make. There's not much choices that I would do differently. But I knew from the very beginning that I could draw something with a style and then go ahead and delete the style and then tell OpenToonz to delete everything that I drew with that style. That was the plan from the very beginning. However, I didn't mess with anything with that style. I didn't like lower the alpha or anything like that. So that's one option that I could do, but more likely if I were to do this all over again, I would just have a dedicated level for that animated blue blob. That's it. That's all that I would do differently about the animation process of the electricity. Now, the reason why the blue blob got in the way is primarily because of two things. If I needed to use the selection tool, what would happen is I would wind up deleting things like the blue blob and the electricity together. So that got annoying, but also this is more annoying than the issue with the selection tool. I would find myself in a situation where I was trying to scrub through my animation and I really couldn't see my animation. The blue blob was in the way. So I would get a dedicated level for the blue animated blob and lower the opacity with the timeline itself. Now, when I went ahead and applied the glow effect to the electricity, I did it differently than I did with the lightning. With the lightning, it was so large that when I applied the glow effect directly to the lightning levels, what would happen is it would wind up blurring it. It would make it so that you couldn't see the contours that I drew, and that was unacceptable. So I duplicated the lightning effects and applied the effects to the duplicate levels on the bottom of the stacking order with the lightning. With the electricity, it was so small that when I applied the glow effect to the electricity, I could just apply it directly to the electricity and play with a few settings and such like that. And electricity is just a white series of strings, basically. And so this weird lamp shade effect that I was describing in the previous video wasn't really too much of an issue in this specific case. So in closing, I would like to say that I've really enjoyed working on this project. When I've been at work, I've been thinking about it, different things that I could do, a lot of experimentation, a lot of research. It's just been thoroughly enjoyable from start to finish. And I pretty much got everything that I wanted out of this animation. It's everything that I wanted it to be. The only thing that's missing out of it is the actual beveled effect. However, I think that with the reflection, I was able to imply a little bit of that beveled effect that I wanted, and really, I don't feel like I lost out on anything with this. I am so satisfied with the result. It's exciting. It's awesome. This is my brand. Awesome. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell. And if you'd like to see more of my content, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.